Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Shailee Nanavati and I will once again be your host today. So welcome to the fifth webinar in the series, Demystifying the Path to Success. So Shape Your Future brings you industry leaders so you can hear from the top professionals and their path to success. You can find our website with the link in the comments to find out more information about Shape Your Future and for details and notifications for our other events. And to hear about our latest updates and informations, be sure to join our subscription list. So now I'm really pleased to introduce you all to Derek. He is currently Nike's lead product engineer and was previously Boeing's design engineer. So he has worked on incredible aircrafts and has engineered some of Nike's most well-known shoes. Receiving his mechanical engineering degrees from UCLA, then Columbia, he has had an incredible one-of-a-kind career journey. So Derek, we can't wait to hear more about you and all your experiences in career. So tell us more.
Hey, thanks for having me. So I've been at Nike for about 7 years as a lead product engineer. But kind of where it all started was in California in high school, playing basketball, hanging out with friends, and how the sport naturally gravitates you towards like sneakers and the culture. And kind of growing up, thinking about Nike, you always see it as a dream job destination. And that was certainly the case for me, except there were two problems. Number one, I was a terrible artist, couldn't draw. And number two, I had applied to Foot Action, Champs, Sport Chalet, Finish Line, and got rejected at every single one of those places. So I kind of took it as a sign that, you know what, working at Nike just wasn't going to be it for me. So I pivoted in high school to kind of chase down my other passion, which was cars, motorcycles, and kind of mechanics. And that's how I kind of got into mechanical engineering and how I pursued that at UCLA. I really started to hit my stride kind of junior, senior year going into grad school. The first 2 years in college are kind of weeder years, and they really try to, make sure that you really want to be there. And it was a grind, but if you stick it out, you start getting into the groove and you start really learning the stuff that you're passionate about. So I decided to continue learning into grad school, went to Columbia. From there, I was recruited to work at Boeing. To be honest, I wasn't really an airplane guy. I'm really more cars, motorcycles, but I felt like Boeing was a great company and certainly a good place to start my career. And of all kind of the mechanical fields, it's one of the most challenging and certainly the most complicated and involved in terms of just how big the scale is. So I was at Boeing for a number of years. I worked on a refueling aircraft for the military, which was super awesome. And then I started to work on some 747 like performance packages, and came upon a random listing that said engineer for Nike. And I thought, well, might as well give it a shot. I was really happy with where I was at Boeing, and I could see myself kind of fulfilling a career there, but just decided to give it one more go. All those years of rejection at Champs, didn't hold me back, and I decided to apply again. And I actually didn't get the job when I applied. It was for a Nike training position, and there was a more suitable candidate. But in talking to the recruiter, she felt like I had something to offer, and so she brought me back onto the panelist for Nike basketball. And when I interviewed for that one, the guys there took a chance on me, and I've been around ever since. So that was kind of my journey to Nike.
Wow, it's great. Like you had this dream, even though rejected, you still went along with your other passions, and you ended up at Nike. It was meant to be.
Yeah, and it's a ton of fun. I can't imagine doing anything else, to be honest. And at Boeing, it was actually kind of interesting. People thought I was weird for having about 10 pairs of shoes. No one really understood. And then I got to, Nike, and people wear 10 pairs in a week, 10 different pairs. So I've certainly found a niche there.
Yeah, that's great. So, kind of talking about what you're like currently doing at Nike. So, you are a shoe engineer, as you told us. So, could you kind of explain what goes into designing something so complex like Nike shoes? Like, how do you come up with these ideas and innovations and continue to make them better and better?
Great question. I'm really just one small portion of a very large team that delivers these amazing products. Um, so the shoes kind of start from a brief, and a brief kind of sets the tone of what is the product, what is it supposed to do, who is it supposed to serve, and is that like what the athlete wants. And so we start with that list, or the brief, to identify what the challenges are that we want to solve. And so we'll get together with the rest of the team, a developer, myself, an engineer, marketing, design, and start to come up with different ways that we can approach that problem. And sometimes it's very materials based. Other times it's, maybe more design driven. Other times it's a little bit more story driven. But in the end, we usually get to the fulfillment of that brief, and that's what we bring to market. So an engineer's role in that is really to ensure that the performance features, like the fit, how it molds around your foot, how it contains you at different movements, the ride, how it feels underneath your foot when you're running, jumping, cutting, and then like traction, are up to the standards that our elite athletes need. So yeah, fit, ride, traction, those three. And then the other half of engineering is making sure that we can bring it to scale, and we can make it at a reasonable price.
God, it's kind of like it's not just you, like the whole team puts together the issue, but finding the need, what the athlete wants, what the audience wants, and then kind of like building it from there, helps you get to like the end product, if I understood that correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a whole team effort. We've got about 50 people on the Nike basketball team that deliver the shoes that you see in the market.
Nice. So, kind of like looking at it from like a college student point out, like me and a lot of other students here are listening. So, what were like the most useful classes or things that you learned in college that has helped you so far, like the most in your career journey? Like, is everything we're learning now really that helpful? Like, will it help us if we want to pursue an engineering career or any other career kind of in that area?
Yeah. So I'll tell you right now, I don't use any differential calculus. I don't. I don't do any of the vibrations modeling, or the more hardcore kind of engineering specific classes. But what college was really useful for, and then I still carry to this day, is how do you approach the problems, right? I think engineering really just teaches you to identify what the problem is, what your boundaries are, where you can and cannot innovate, um, and ultimately you figure out a path to get to a solution. Sometimes there's only one correct solution, which is kind of a lot of what you get taught in college. But at Nike, there are many correct solutions, and maybe there's one correct one today, and you're going to do the next one tomorrow. Um, so yeah, at Nike, it's a little bit more ambiguous in terms of like the rigorous engineering. But I will say at Boeing, it was almost kind of directly applicable. Like I specialized in like failure mechanics, carbon composites, and that was certainly useful at Boeing. So
Yeah.
still need to pay attention in class, but having a bigger picture is always very helpful.
So it also like you said, it depends on like what you do. Like at Nike, it's a little bit more ambiguous. You can have many different solutions to a problem, but at Boeing, you're able to directly apply. So kind of looking at what you're more interested in, what you want to do, can definitely help us as students like figure out what classes you want to take, how much like you will actually get out of it.
Yeah, and I think if you're into the engineering field, kind of in general, mechanical is a really good major to focus on because it is so broad and you can apply a lot of the principles pretty broadly. And you don't ever have to just stick to that either. Like I went from engineering rigid structures to a completely soft goods industry, which are, you know, very, very different. So
Yeah. So you said like mechanical engineering is kind of a good place to start if you really like engineering because it's so broad and you can like do many different things with that degree. So do you like how was your experience at UCLA and Columbia? And like I know it's changed now, but do you think those are good schools for mechanical engineering or engineering in general?
oh yeah, 100%. I had a great experience at both of those schools. I mean, UCLA and me being a basketball junkie, those kind of go hand in hand. But on top of that, their engineering program has gotten better since I left. And I don't think I did anything to help it improve. I think it just got better after I graduated. And so it's a really good school to be a part of. And I think their faculty and the resources that they have really enabled you to kind of chase whatever it is that you're really into, right? They have Formula SAE, they have the Baja teams, you know, if you're into the mechanical kind of car type things, um, and yeah, kind of the world's your oyster there. And then at Columbia, you know, I chose that school because I wanted to get as far away from California as possible. And I wanted to see what the East Coast was like, and you know, Columbia did not disappoint. Again, their faculty really cares, and I think there's also a little bit of difference with like being a graduate student and an undergrad, and you certainly feel taken care of as a graduate at Columbia.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's like you feel like you can do everything there, like all the engineering, all the different things they have. That's great to know.
Yeah, but you know, USC on the other side of town, I heard, is not that great.
No,
So
of
just
course,
kidding. Just a
rebel school.
friendly rivalry.
So, so like going kind of back to like Nike and Boeing, you have plenty of experience in the mechanical engineering industry now. So I know it might be hard for you, but what has been your favorite product or project that you have worked on since graduating?
Since graduating, well, it's a little bit easier for Boeing because I only worked on two different products. The refueling tanker, to me, I think is super cool. Like even the idea of getting gas in the air without having to land or pull over to a gas station, like refueling two planes as they're moving simultaneously. I think that's super cool. And to be a part of that and the new wave of refueling tankers in the Air Force is very rewarding. In fact, I was up in Seattle not too long ago, and I saw the plane in the airstrip, and I think they're doing maintenance on it or something. And I'd never seen it before. And I thought it was just the coolest thing. I literally pulled over on the side of the road, peeked through the fence, and tried to take a picture of the finished product because I never got to see it. So that was pretty sweet. At Nike, it's a lot tougher. You know, we put out maybe 17 to 20 pairs of basketball shoes every year. I work on about a third of them. It's been a lot of shoes, but probably the Kyrie line, and specifically the Kyrie 5. I don't know if actually, hold on. Got one right here. This is the Kyrie 5. It's a little bit older, but it is one of my favorites. And it's one of my favorites because I got a couple of patents on it. But more importantly, this is the airbag that was in it that I helped work on. And I think it was like 300% bigger or 270% bigger than the one before it. And they made an action figure out of it.
I've never seen that before from Nike.
So this was like a promotional thing that they gave away in China, and they made it like a little action figure. And I never thought I'd be a part of an action figure like that. That's the coolest thing to me. I'm still a kid on the inside, and that one stands out.
No, yeah, that's an amazing shoe. And like even like at Boeing, that's incredible. Like they're refueling tanks, like you said. It would be extremely cool to be a part of something like that.
Super cool. Yeah.
So I know like we've been talking a lot about shoes, so maybe to satisfy all those airplane nerds out there, so maybe talk about a bit more about your experience, like kind of building and designing that tank, and a little bit more of like the details of like what went into it.
Yeah, sure. So I was in the frames group, which is kind of like the backbone of the airplane. If you think about all the different components of an airplane, there's like hundreds of thousands of them. And it feels like there's almost a group for every single one. So I did frame components for a very small section of the plane right behind the cockpit of this refueling tank. So it's maybe about a sixth of the length of the plane and just the frames of it. And so it was very much structural based, and you had like structural stress targets that you need to hit that were constantly being updated through simulations that were being run. So at like a high level, they would simulate, is the plane going through a crazy amount of turbulence and pulling up at a certain angle? What are the loads that get transmitted down to your section and then your part? And so we would take that, and that would drive kind of the design philosophy and what we were trying to solve. And in that scenario, there was usually like a very small subset of correct answers. It either met the load conditions or it didn't. And if it didn't, you went back and you figured it out. So very different from Nike, because no one's going to tell you it can or can't be that. You can kind of just dream and let it be. But at Boeing, a little bit more rigorous. Of course, the FAA is involved, the Air Force is involved, people's lives are at stake if anything fails. And so we really looked into all the details, and we sweat every single millimeter of those parts. And the parts were mostly aluminum, titanium kind of thing. So all the metal work and fracture analysis that I learned in school, it's kind of just like, okay, take that and apply it straight here. And everyone there kind of spoke the same language because they had learned the same thing. So again, very applicable knowledge and skill set transfer.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like the difference in like Nike, like you said, like people's lives are on the line. It's like an entire plane. And like even though Nike, like you said, like breaks it down into different groups based on the thing, I can imagine it's nothing compared to the different groups Boeing has there for like each specific part of the plane.
Oh yeah, huge workforce there.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's about time. So we're gonna open it up to the audience to ask some questions. So while we wait for some questions to come in, I'm just gonna ask you, what do you love most about your job?
I love just how much it changes day to day. The problems are and challenges are different, model to model, year to year. We're constantly trying to push the limits of what we can do, and we're always kind of looking back to serve the athlete. And that's not just the elite athletes. It's it's kids, all the way through high school, college, and then up to the pros. And every voice is really important to us. So we take the time to really listen to everybody and try to pull their feedback in. And honestly, right now, kind of like me pulling over on the side of the road in Seattle to take a look at that plane that I worked on. I used to like to go to the malls every once in a while and just watch to see who would pick up the shoe. Because I remember being a kid and just holding a shoe and begging my parents for it. And I rarely got that shoe that I begged my parents for, but if I did, it was like the best day of my life. And so when I see people in the stores and they gravitate towards something that I worked on, it's like an extremely fulfilling feeling, and puts a smile on my face right away, and it makes it all worth it.
No, yeah, it's like amazing, like kind of like seeing that end result, like having that satisfaction of seeing it. And then like you said, like making sure everyone's voice is heard. Like Nike's a place where it's not like specifically for one person. Anyone can like buy Nike shoes and kind of be a part of that.
Yeah.
So we have a question. So how did you integrate your section of the plane and make sure it integrated and not negatively impact another section, even if it wasn't adjacent? And she thinks it's really cool.
Great question. We had a lot of integration meetings to work out the integration. So the people that were right next to your section, you would have to be like best friends. If you changed anything, the other person would have to know about it. And the system would update to alert of when things maybe weren't fully aligned. Like I think one time a few of the parts were off by an eighth of an inch, and it caused a red flag. And so people had to work it out, and there's a whole meeting to kind of resolve that. But all those checks are in place so that everyone's communicating. And again, it's a big team. So communication is really important. Your integration is really important. And even if it wasn't adjacent, again, like the high level loading scenarios would get translated and broken up into the different sections. So you knew exactly what your target was and what your part was supposed to do within the greater picture.
So like making sure you communicate, like you said, like having meetings, integrations, and it's crazy. Like even that small amount could have caused such a big red flag in the plane. But it's about the precision and making sure you're communicating with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So our next question. So how did you come up with the idea for the Zoom Air unit in the Kyrie 5? And how often do you discuss or get feedback from athletes to design their shoes?
How often? We get feedback probably 3, 4, 5+ times in the development cycle of every shoe. And in the Kyrie line specifically, a lot of athletes that were wearing that, including Kyrie, said, hey, I would like a little bit more cushioning. It's a little bit firm. If you go back in the lineage of shoes, kind of the 1 through 4, they were all very like minimal, low profile, good court feel shoes. And people just wanted a touch more cushioning. And so that was part of the brief. You know, that was one of the top line items. And so we said, okay, we got to make this airbag a little bit bigger. How do we make it fit? And that's kind of what got us down this path of designing in the airbag in the way that we did, and ultimately getting this guy.
So like they actually told you that they wanted more cushioning, and then based on that, you kind of fit the shoe and engineered it to their needs.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes people go the other way and say they want maybe a little bit better court feel or less lace pressure or a higher collar or something. And again, we listen to all of those voices and we roll that feedback in.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so our next question is, do you have to have a mechanical engineering degree to do something like engineering Nike shoes? And if so, what other degrees could you do?
I would say no, you don't need a mechanical engineering degree. You just need to be able to problem solve. You need to be able to work with a team. You need to be able to communicate well and identify the problems, and you need to be able to work within kind of the boundaries that you're given in the timeline that you're given. So the skill set of engineering kind of fits that, right? There's a little bit more rigorous problem solving and approach to how you identify some of the issues. But if you have good ideas and you can troubleshoot things and you can learn kind of on the fly, anyone can be an engineer at Nike.
Yeah. So that's like if people don't want to go hardcore into mechanical engineering, like learning all of those different stuff, you can still design shoes and be a part of that community.
Yeah, and I totally forgot, if you're great at drawing and sketching stuff up, yeah, you can be a designer. If you're good at just figuring out materials, you can be a materials designer or a materials developer. If you're good at running a team, there's people for that. So there are so many different teammates and roles within Nike basketball and Nike as a whole. I just didn't know about that as a kid. I just thought it was sketching and drawing up cool pictures, and I can't do that. I still can't do that.
No, yeah. You can. There's always a way to be part of a Nike as a team. Okay, so our next question is, what is your advice to high schoolers looking to go into mechanical engineering, and is there anything that they can do now?
Awesome question. Again, I fully recommend mechanical engineering. It has served me well, but my one piece of advice would be learn to market yourself. You're going to need to sell your ideas and your concepts and your solution in any workplace, right? And you need to be able to communicate your ideas in a clear and concise way. So, you got to do the engineering part, and I'm trusting that, you're going to be great at that. But no one told me that I should focus on a little bit of marketing, a little bit of branding, and a little bit of public speaking. That will kind of take you up to the next level and allow you to kind of integrate with different teams that speak in different languages, not just rigorous math or physics.
So kind of like those other, not like the major engineering, but the other like skill sets you need to have to be successful.
Yeah.
So next question is, how many different materials and parts are there in a typical Nike shoes? And by the way, they said they love Nike.
Right on. A typical Nike shoe, there's no such thing as typical, but it ranges from maybe 150 components to 300 components.
That's crazy.
And on average, 200 different people touch your shoe before it gets to you, from manufacturing to shipping to the store guy who brings it out to you and has you try it on.
Wow, that's crazy. Like when we pick it up, we don't even think of all these like small different things in engineering.
Yeah, there is a lot to it, and a lot of it's a little bit nerdy, but I found it super cool, and I didn't know that was the case either until I got here and kind of learned on the job. Again, my training is not in shoemaking, so I had to learn that as I went, and you start to figure out the boundaries of shoemaking and how to work within that and how to push some of those boundaries, because that's kind of what engineering and engineers do.
Yeah. So our next question, I think this will, the last one we'll have time for. So what do you look for when you hire someone in your team?
Awesome question. I look for people that can admit they don't have all the answers, but know how to get it. And I look for people that are willing to be an integral part of the team and not necessarily kind of dominate the conversation all the time. So teamwork, super important. willingness and ability to learn and adapt. Those are kind of 1 and 2. And then if you're able to kind of generate new ideas, then that's certainly a very valuable asset. So there you go.
There you go. If you want to get hired by Derek and join his Nike team, make sure you have those things on your application.
That's it.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for today. But thank you so much for your time today, Derek. Your career is truly inspiring, so interesting. It was really a pleasure learning more about you.
Thanks again.
And viewers, once again, thank you for watching and sticking through the whole series. And although this is the last webinar of this series, we are still working day and night, planning other webinars and events to help you shape your futures and reach your own success. So don't forget to subscribe to our mailing list on our website. The link is in the chat. And I will look forward to seeing you all soon. And once again, thank you so much, Derek, for your time today. See you all next time.